Cheers, guys. Epics 911, welcome to the Elitist Geek VR news for Tuesday, September 6th, 2016. Bit of preamble first, just some clarification on the price tag in yesterday's video that I assigned the Gear 360. A few of you pointed out to me that it wasn't in fact $900. I have no idea where I got that price, but it's in fact $349 US or $499 Canadian. Other areas I'm not sure, but apologies for that. Still expensive, but $500 is still a lot better than $900. Next little bit of preamble. No sooner do I do a story, and I believe it was a couple of days ago, where I talked about sensationalist, alarmist headlines about the slow VR summer signaling the death knell of the VR industry, and what a crock of crap that was, and pointed out some factors and things to consider on, why I'm not concerned. Anyways, exactly what I feared would happen has come to pass, and it seems like 50% of the VR news stories today have to do with doom and gloom. I'm going to put up a screenshot here. This is virtual reality Google search, and the ones that I've circled in this picture, you got it, are the doom and gloom, the industry is dead type articles. I'm not going to rehash all the reasons why I think that's a crock of bull. I did that in the other video, and that video is still there. I can link it below. But suffice it to say, I am still not concerned. We have reasons why it was slow. Those reasons aren't going to change very quickly. One of them is price point. I know there's so many people on this channel that follow the VR scene closely. They're checking out my news videos. They haven't made the financial commitment for a variety of reasons. Wait and see, price dropping, haven't made up their mind yet. I mean, there's a lot of people still. And if you use the sample size from this channel alone, you can see we're not talking about an industry that is dying. We're talking about an industry that is suffering from a lack of awesome games, which it's just so early. There's no real awesome games. I mean, I mentioned the 4 that I like, but let's be real here. Let's be honest. Some of those games are over very quick. They're not games that you can just play ad nauseum for a month in a row. There's people who are going to get bored. The kind of game that has the staying power, like an Elite Dangerous, isn't for everyone. So I totally get that. Just wait and see. When we start getting these bigger titles start launching, they are going to move units this holiday season. And the biggest one to watch is going to be Sony. Sony October 13th. Mark my words. And again, why I'm not concerned. So, yeah, it would have been nice. Obviously, had the number of Vive users on Steam grown more than 0.3% in July, but there's still time for that to happen. So it's not time to ring the warning bell, people. But of course, they've got to come up with articles. They're going to write this stuff, right? But all it does is it perpetuates the perception that it is in trouble when it isn't, right? So that's the beef I have with it. Take from that what you will. Now, the next story is a little bit on the creepy, freaky side. And just a quick little bit of background. When I was a kid, would have been from about age 8 to 12 or 13, I had a buddy. His name was Mickey, Irish kid. And I'd have sleepovers at his house quite often. Weekend nights, his mom would go to bars or to parties, and we wouldn't see her until the next day. So essentially, we had the run of the house. And one of the things we loved to do was rent R-rated movies, especially horror movies. Just loved them. Well, there was one movie we rented on VHS called The Asylum, and it was a movie that originally came out in 1972, so this would have been about 9 years later when we watched it. And holy crap, did it have an impact on me. I mean, it was just It's not even that scary when you look at it now, but for some reason it triggered this repeating nightmare that I had for about 2 weeks after watching this, where I was locked into an insane asylum against my will. Nobody would believe me. I couldn't contact my family or friends. You know, I mean, the typical horror movie cliche. And then I would have it sporadically over the next few years. Haven't had it in decades, but it was a nightmare that I had. Where I'm going with this is there is a new VR amusement park ride. It's going to be opening up in time for Halloween. Knott's Berry Farm has one. Toronto, Canada's Wonderland has one. And a couple of others. The link is below. You can check out exactly which parks are going to feature it. But if you haven't guessed already, and you probably have, the VR ride that they're featuring is one where you are an asylum patient. And what probably didn't help the fact that I had those nightmares is there was an insane asylum in our kind of city, well, across the river, but everybody knew about it. It's called Riverview, and it formally closed down in 2012. And I'm not kidding, that is the actual name. Like, you'd think of that would be the perfect horror movie name, but it was actually called Riverview. Look it up, Riverview, Coquitlam. And my God, was it a creepy place. But there were all kinds of ghost stories that kids would tell about that place. So talking about that while we were watching the movie, yeah, that probably didn't help. But anyways, back to this ride. So it's about an 8-minute amusement ride. You put your HMD on, you're admitted into an insane asylum, and then bound in a wheelchair, all against your will, and essentially taken through the halls of this insane asylum, right? So can you say Epix is going to be avoiding this ride? No, I jest. Probably going to be okay after about 30 years, but it's probably not going to be the first ride that I line up for next time I'm at Knott's Berry Farm. But for those of you who are interested, again, link will be below. And yeah, I'll put up a couple of pics. Probably when I mentioned Riverview last time, you probably saw those pics of how this place looked. Right out of a horror movie. All right. Next up, Intel. Now, even though Intel hasn't publicly stated an ambitious VR or AR roadmap for themselves, their actions are certainly showing the opposite. And the latest of that, so Apple has been kind of doing this through patents. And I mentioned in a couple of past videos that patents are often just to protect the company or to kind of secure future R&D. A lot of those patents never get acted upon. They just stagnate, in perpetuity, and nothing ever becomes of them. Intel is going about this a little different. They're actually acquiring companies. So the latest company they acquired, it's a computer vision company called Movidius. And these guys do what they call deep learning. These are on-device vision processing units, VPUs, as opposed to GPUs. So deep learning, depth processing, navigation mapping, natural interactions, all the kind of things, if you were going to go into VR, especially augmented reality, that you would probably want. And what this company Movidius is also known for is mobile chipsets that accomplish that. And that's an area that Intel has some experience in, but their forte is more kind of the desktop processor. That's been their bread and butter forever, right? So interesting to see where this goes, because we haven't, other than the VR that I talked about from Intel about 6 weeks ago, there hasn't been a lot said publicly. So we'll see what this, if it turns into anything. Usually when you acquire a company, unlike these patents though, it's actually going to lead to something concrete. Unless they were purely just wanting to acquire the intellectual property of the company and then shut it down. But I don't think that's the case here. Halcyon, SyFy. It's Halcyon is a sci-fi show that's going to premiere September 22nd. and it's 15 episodes long. 10 are going to be conventional 2D episodes. 5 of the episodes are going to be virtual reality style episodes. And I say that because according to these guys, this isn't going to be your standard 360-degree non-interactive experience. There will be some limited interaction. One of the things they talk about is being able to interact with clues in the show. What does that mean? Who knows? They don't really elaborate on that, but as we get closer to September 22nd, I imagine more information is going to be forthcoming because people are going to want to be able to do what they need to do and know what to do. So I imagine they're going to clarify that. What exactly does that mean, interacting with clues? But look for that. It's a sci-fi show, and that's a channel that's really kind of ticked me off in the past because sci-fi really isn't that sci-fi anymore, but that's a whole different episode on a whole different topic. We're not going to go in there right now, but look for that September 22nd. Next headline. This has to do with a book, and the book is called Ready Player One. Author Ernest Clines. It's a 2011 book. The book takes place in 2044. Your typical kind of dystopian future. Humanity is, broken down and seeks escape. It's basically an escapist society in virtual reality. And what I thought was interesting, a lot of the articles today focused on Birmingham, basically in England, from where the set is. And they showed pictures. There's a poster one, which I probably have up right now. And you can see the units that they're wearing. The Sony, you could probably argue Vive, Rift, but to me, the most advanced, futuristic-looking HMD would be Sony's, right? Almost to the point where it kind of looks like a toy, but I would argue it looks a lot more futuristic than the Rift or the Vive. I'm not saying better, just kind of more futuristic. Anyways, it definitely looks more futuristic than this HMD that they're showing in the poster. And then there's another shot involving some extras, and you can see one of the extras, and I've circled it in the picture, wearing what looks like a Rift DK2 on his head. So that's going to be a movie adaptation. Again, Ready Player One, Steven Spielberg. I don't know if he just threw his name at it. I didn't research it that deeply, or if he's more personally involved in the film. I suspect the first one, not the latter. But as we get closer, we will find out. Now, speaking of Sony HMDs, Sony has just released a statement today, and it's an article on Upload VR, that all PlayStation virtual reality headsets are going to include an 8 demo disc. So even if you can't afford any games, you're going to be at least able to play the demos on the disc. And the titles that are included, that include demos of Drive Club VR, Ocean Descent from PlayStation VR Worlds, Riggs, which is a game that has me really excited, Tumble VR, Battlezone, Eve Valkyrie, Wayward Sky, and the 8th title, Headmaster. So again, these are all demos, but we're kind of used to that on the PC side of things, so it's kind of nice. Even if you couldn't afford one game on day one, you go through that, you set up the HMD on your PlayStation, at least you have 8 experiences to try. So no idea how long the demos are. They didn't specify, or how short, which kind of reminded me in general, we don't really see demos much anymore. I know on the Nintendo eStore for the 3DS there's demos, but in terms of PC or consoles at large, there just doesn't seem to be a lot of demos anymore. I don't know if that's intentional. Really, we've got early access, but you're paying kind of full price to kind of see what the game is about. And it's usually in a pretty bad state, where historically demos tend to show a game in a more favorable light. Yeah, they're not always the final build, but at least they're close, right? So that they're not going to crash every 5 seconds, etc. So yeah, I don't know why that popped up in my head. But anyways, at least you've got the 8 to try. So those will probably be among the first that I try, that's for sure. Now, Snapchat, which, unless you're living under a rock and you don't know what that is, it's a social media platform. They've also done a couple of acquisitions to kind of move forward into AR more so than virtual reality. In June, they acquired a company that, I'm just trying to see the name here, Seene, S-E-E-N-E. And this company specialized in capturing 3D models via the front-facing phone camera or rear-facing, whichever. They could take a real-world object and model it in 3D. So they acquired that company back in June, and now we get word that Snapchat has registered with an organization that it's a Bluetooth special interest group, SIG is what it's called. Members of that, you need to be a member of that prior to using Bluetooth in your hardware. So they are definitely taking steps. It'll be interesting to see where they go, because we know kind of what Zuckerberg's plans are for Facebook, how he kind of sees, the move towards virtual reality. Neat to see where Snapchat is going with that. I can't say I use it myself, but just from a AR, VR point of view, I'm definitely interested in just seeing where it goes, right? Well, that's it for the news, guys. It is game time for me. And yeah, we'll get to that. But I'll do, when I do those videos, I'll talk about it. So I'm just going to shut up here. As always, guys, cheers. And we will definitely catch you on the VR flip side.